Integer operations, or working with positive and negative numbers. Integers are our whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, and their opposites, -1, -2, -3. I am hopeful that you are super comfortable with integer operations, having practiced them a lot in 8th grade math or Challenge 7. In those classes, we use some great models. We use integer chips, we use number lines. But the expectation in algebra is that you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide positive and negative numbers without a model and without a calculator. There are some great shortcuts or strategies that we can use to do this. So let's start with addition. So when we're adding together two numbers, we need to look at their signs. If both numbers are positive or both numbers are negative, meaning they have the same sign, then we're going to add the numbers together and then determine the sign of our answer by the original sign of those original numbers. So adding two positives, our answer is positive. Adding two negatives, our answer is negative. This first example, 3 plus 5, hopefully you're really comfortable with that. We add 3 and 5 and we get 8. And then since our original two numbers were positive, our final answer is positive. Here's another example where the original numbers have the same sign. They're both negative. And so we add 3 and 5 together. We get 8. But now since the original numbers were negative, our final answer is negative. So we added 3 and 5, and then since our original two numbers were both negative, our final answer is -8. When we're adding two numbers with different signs, meaning one positive and one negative, now we subtract the numbers, and we obtain the sign of our final answer from the sign of the bigger number, where bigger's in quotes because we're talking about bigger in absolute value, or bigger ignoring the negative sign. So here's an example. We have a negative plus a positive, -3 plus 5. So we're going to subtract the numbers. 5 minus 3 gives me 2. Now I look at the two original numbers and I see which one is bigger in absolute value. So ignoring this negative. Is 3 bigger or is 5 bigger? 5 is bigger, so 5 has a positive sign. It's a positive number. So that gives me the sign of my final answer. So 5 is positive, the final answer is positive 2. Here's an example where I have different signs, +3 added to -5. And so again, I subtract. 5 minus 3 is 2. Now I look at my two original numbers and I see that this 5 is the bigger number in absolute value, so ignoring this negative. 5 is bigger and it's negative. So that tells me the sign of my final answer is negative, -2. When I'm subtracting, you may just be comfortable subtracting, and that's great. If you're not, you may want to change your subtraction problem to an addition problem by adding the opposite. What this means is if we're subtracting a positive, that's the same as adding a negative. And if we're subtracting a negative, that's the same as adding a positive. Let's look at this first example. So 3 minus 5. 3 minus 5 is subtracting +5. So subtracting +5 is the same as adding -5. 3 plus -5. Now we've already reviewed adding integers, and in fact, we've already done this exact problem. 3 plus -5 is -2, because we performed the computation 5 minus 3, 2, and then my final answer is negative since 5 was bigger in absolute value. Next example, now I am subtracting a negative. So when I'm subtracting a negative, -3 minus -5, that is the same as adding +5, -3 plus 5. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding. So -3 plus 5, again, we've already done this problem. -3 plus 5 is +2. Same computation, 5 minus 3 is 2, and then 5 was bigger, so my final answer is positive. Next example, I have -3 minus 5. Again, subtracting a positive. That means this has an equivalent addition problem of -3 plus -5. -3 plus -5, adding two numbers with the same sign. So 3 plus 5 is 8, negative, final answer is negative, and we've already done that problem. Last example of a subtraction problem, 3 minus -5. That is the same as adding a positive, so adding 5, And for sure, 3 plus 5 is a nicer problem than 3 minus negative 5. 3 minus negative 5 is the same as 3 plus 5, which is 8.